As we mentioned, DNI Clapper criticized Mr. Trump for discrediting the intel community's findings on Russian hacking. We want to play again for you that exchange between Missouri Democrat Claire McCaskill and the director at Thursday's hearing.
Benefits from that, Director Clapper. The American people, them losing confidence in the intelligence community and the work of the intelligence community. Who actually is the benefactor of someone who is about to become commander-in-chief trashing the intelligence community?
I think there is an important distinction here between healthy skepticism, which policymakers, to include policymaker number one, should always have for intelligence, but I think there's a difference between skepticism and disparagement.
Matthew Waxman was a senior official at the State Department, Defense Department, and National Security Council during the George W. Bush administration. He's now a professor at Columbia Law School. Matthew, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let me start off by asking you about Director Clapper saying that the intelligence community, quote, will ascribe a motivation to these cyber attacks when it releases its report next week. Until then, what is your sense of why Russian President Vladimir Putin would have directed these attacks?
I think there are probably two big reasons, and we may never be able to determine with perfect certainty exactly what the motivation was. I mean, motivations in intelligence work are always difficult, but let me mention two. One is to sow some doubt, some chaos, some uncertainty in the American electoral process. That's consistent with what Russia has been doing in Eastern Europe, now Western Europe, trying to undermine the integrity of democratic systems. The second possibility is that he was specifically trying to put a thumb on the scale in favor of Trump against Hillary Clinton, really trying to actually influence the specific outcome of the election.
Let me turn to the tension that we've seen play out publicly here between the president-elect and members of the intelligence community. The president-elect questioning their findings about the Russians being behind this interference through the cyber attacks. Do you have a sense of how that tension is being received among those out in the field within the intelligence community?
It's quite astounding and surprising. We've seen presidents doubting intelligence and some tension sometimes between the White House and the intelligence community. We haven't seen this level of tension and this kind of commentary coming from a president. I think not only have the president's comments that are quite derogatory of the intelligence community, not only are they inappropriate, not only, in my view, are they misinformed, but I actually think they're also quite dangerous.
Why?
They're dangerous because in the course of his presidency, in protecting all of us, the President of the United States is going to depend on the intelligence community and depend on the credibility of those assessments. The President is going to end up making life or death decisions and going to the American people, going to the international community and saying, I made this decision based on assessments from the intelligence community. And at this point, he's really quite actively trying to undercut, or so it seems, undercut the credibility of American intelligence.
Isn't it healthy for a president, an incoming president, to have a dose of skepticism about intelligence?
Skepticism, yes, but the president-elect's comments go way beyond the kind of healthy skepticism that Vice President-elect Pence talked about. Intelligence is never perfect, and the intelligence community has gotten some major issues wrong in the past. I think what healthy skepticism would look like is the president-elect saying, I am going to get detailed briefings from the intelligence community. It's important that we get this absolutely right. So I want to hear what they have to say, and then I, as president-elect, will need to, in my role as commander-in-chief, make appropriate decisions. That's skepticism, but at this point, he's going way beyond mere skepticism.
What about structure here? A transition official tells CBS News that the president-elect wants to, quote-unquote, streamline the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence Office, and the CIA. What do you make of that notion, streamlining those agencies?
We don't really know yet what that means. And I should say, to begin with, taking a good hard look at the intelligence community structure and thinking about improvements, that's a good thing. The intelligence community has gone through a number of reforms, especially over the last 15 years, and I don't think we've got it exactly right yet. One, for example, the creation of the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, that was designed to fix one problem, or one set of problems, which is that we have more than a dozen different intelligence agencies. The DNI is supposed to provide some coordination across them, sit atop those agencies and provide some coordination among them. That helps solve the coordination problem, but it creates a new problem of its own, which is often another layer of bureaucracy. It's possible that what the incoming Trump administration wants to do is try to address some of those inefficiencies, perhaps reduce the number of layers. These are reasonable proposals to at least consider.
There was a hearing, as you know, on Capitol Hill about Russian hacking. Speaking about the level of retaliation needed, Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican, said President Obama is throwing a, quote, pebble at the Russians, that he should be using a rock. What do you think about the current level of retaliation? Do you think it's adequate?
I think it's probably not adequate yet. Among the actions that the Obama administration has announced publicly, we're talking about sanctions of Russian intelligence agencies and some individuals, expulsion of Russian agents, publication of certain ways in which Russian agencies have conducted hacking. These are useful measures, but they probably don't go far enough in imposing real costs on Putin and the Russian government. Now, what we're really talking about here is not punishment for punishment's sake, but deterrence. We want to deter Russia. We want to deter others from committing these kinds of acts against us in the future. And deterrence is going to require not just short-term actions by the Obama administration, but real demonstrated commitments by the new administration to impose costs on those who might attack us in the future. That's going to be one of the big challenges for the Trump administration.
Something we'll certainly be keeping an eye on. Matthew Waxman, thank you so much for your perspective. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.